Red.
Good morning on this Monday. Bishop on Air, hanging with you each and every weekday and giving you a rundown of things people are talking about in and around the state of Illinois. And if you like what you see every morning, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And join me on other social media as well. X is a great place to find all the work that I put out there. So be sure to follow along with that throughout the day. Coming up, a conversation with Washington gun law. I chatted with William Kirk, and a lot of you watch that channel, so we'll definitely have an interesting conversation about the Second Amendment and what he's seeing and why he got into that space, talking about that. So we'll actually have that conversation coming up for you in just moments, but also talked with William Kelly. So a morning of Williams here. From William Kelly, we talk about a variety of things happening in Chicago. So looking forward to that. Stay tuned. That's on the way. But first, let's just take a brief look at some of the national political conversation that's happening. And you've got the statements that former President Donald Trump made in Ohio over the weekend that President Joe Biden's pouncing on. Here is Joe Biden's Twitter handle. It says, "It's clear this guy wants another January 6th, referencing former President Donald Trump. He says the American people are going to give him another resounding election defeat this November. And he shared this clip, and it's from a rally speech that Trump made in Ohio.
Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole... That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it.
So just highlighting the, quote, bloodbath comment. And that obviously sparks a certain image in people's head. But if you look at the definition of bloodbath, it can also mean financially. And that's what the president was talking about. As many people underneath President Joe Biden's page highlighted, including Clown World, saying, here's the full video to President Biden saying, stop lying.
Mexico has taken, over a period of 30 years, 34% of the automobile manufacturing business in our country. Think of it, went to Mexico. China now is building a couple of massive plants where they're going to build the cars in Mexico and they think that they're going to sell those cars into the United States with no tax at the border. Let me tell you something to China. If you're listening, President Xi, and you and I are friends, but he understands the way I deal, those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. Now, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole... That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars. They're building massive factories. A friend of mine...
So, again, the former president talking about a bloodbath in the car manufacturing industry. But you've got headlines from corporate media saying Trump says bloodbath if he's not elected, and Democrats jumping on that as well. Wasn't the only thing probably sparking some controversy from former President Trump. He also talked about the governors of other states in California, in Illinois, in reference to Gavin Newsom. Here is what the former president had to say.
Gavin Newsom. Does anyone ever... Gavin Newsom. S-C-U-M is his last. No, Gavin Newsom. This guy, he's always talking about, oh, California, it's great, great. They're losing a fortune. People are moving out. I have property there. I love California. One of the most beautiful places. They're destroying it. They're destroying California. This guy is a horrible, horrible governor. In a certain way, I'd like him to run, to be honest. I just think it would be, he's sort of he's just a bullshit artist. It's crazy. He's done such a bad job. But you look at what Democrats have done. Look at Illinois. I don't know how it continues. You have this guy Pritzker. I don't know. He's too busy eating. He wants to eat all the time. Would you like a hamburger? How many do you want? 5? I'll have 5 burgers, please. You go to his office. Would you like a hamburger? Yeah. Okay, I'll have 5 burgers, please. Who the hell orders 5 burgers? But look, our country...
So there you go. There's the former president talking about other governors who could possibly be the Democrat candidates. It's what's been floated around for months, at least, as people question the mental capacity of President Joe Biden. Just wanted to get that out to you so you can digest that a bit. Stay tuned. Coming back, we'll talk with William Kirk. Had a conversation with him late last week. He's from the popular YouTube channel Washington Gun Law. So we talk with him, share that conversation with you next here with Bishop on Air. Thank you so much. With Bishop on Air, very proud to welcome in somebody who doesn't need much of an introduction at all, and that's William Kirk with Washington Gun Law. Thank you so much for taking time with us here. And for those who aren't familiar, they might see your videos and watch them religiously, but who are you and how did you get into this space?
Yeah, well, first of all, Greg, thank you very much for having me, and congratulations on the excellent work that you're doing on behalf of everyone in Illinois and nationwide as well. So I was a DUI lawyer for a number of years, to be honest. I was a drunk driving lawyer, and I was pretty darn good at it. I was the dean of the National College for DUI defense at one point before I was 50. But I didn't have a lot of passion for that practice. It was a good way of making a living, but I never felt a cause. In 2018, I decided to branch out for various business reasons. And the area that I wanted to branch out into was self-defense law, firearms law, and I did so on a local level here in Washington State. I created Washington on the website and all of that. When the summers of 2020 and 2021 rolled around, however, out here in our little summers of love, all hell was breaking loose. And what happened is that people were just calling incessantly on my phone with the same question. And so I started the YouTube channel literally just to answer common questions that we had here in Washington State. And that's all I ever expected the channel to be. But along the way, I began enjoying it more. I began geeking out more on things that were happening in the national level, especially with ATF. And once President Biden got into office, things really began to go sideways. And that then got me interested in what was going on in a lot of other states. Along comes last year's Illinois assault weapon ban, which was absolutely the most sinister and nefarious piece of legislating I've ever seen in my entire life. And I wasn't seeing a lot of folks out there really talking on behalf of the folks in Illinois. And so I just wanted to provide a voice and a level of understanding so that they could understand what their government was doing to them.
Now, obviously, Illinois is just one of 50 states. From your perspective as a litigant, an attorney, somebody who's really plugged into constitutional law, where are we at right now? We've got so many different cases, so many different states. The U.S. Supreme Court has heard some of these, but what's the trajectory you're seeing, especially after the Bruin decision?
Yeah, unfortunately, the trajectory I'm seeing, it kind of mirrors what we're seeing in politics nationwide altogether, which is a complete stratification of our ideas. Our states are either turning deeper and deeper red or deeper and deeper blue. And so what you've seen is now we have 29 states that have advanced constitutional carry. So we have a majority of our states that firmly believe in our inalienable rights and have done just about everything humanly possible to advance them. But then you take a look at the other states that are remaining, and with the exception of a few, they're doing exactly the opposite. They are looking for any way humanly possible to disarm their citizens, and Illinois is right there at the top of that list.
What are you hearing from the gun community out there? I know when I put a story out, when I talk about these issues, a lot of people are interested. Is it a thirst to better understand the Second Amendment? Is it a desire to better understand how the courts are operating, or is it just mere frustration that people have with what they see as the diminishment of their constitutional rights?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both, but I think what we have in the last few years is we have a huge new population into the Second Amendment community. If you take a look at the fastest growing of individuals who are arming themselves, it's not white men anymore. It's minorities, it's the LGBTQ community, it's women, and candidly, those are the groups that really should be arming themselves, because if you look statistically, they're more likely to be victimized. And I think with that demographic change in the 2A community comes this quest for knowledge. I think a lot of people want to really, really understand what are their rights, what are their obligations, and what's going on with their rights. And so that's really provided a nice opportunity for myself, guys like Mark Smith with Four Boxes Diner, Tom Grieve, guys who I geek out on their channels too, for us to really help educate, because as I've stated many times on my channel, we will win this Second Amendment debate. We will, but we're going to win it through education. We're not going to win it through legislation. We're not going to win it through litigation. We're going to win it through education, because the law, the Constitution, common sense are all on our side.
We're talking with Washington gun law host, attorney William Kirk, and glad to be able to sit down with him for a bit here. And as a reporter who runs around the Illinois State House trying to make sense of how this stuff all comes together, and it happens in such rapid succession, really when you've got just like a lame duck session, 3 days left, they pass a gun ban. It was supposed to be like insurance legislation.
Right.
It's a difficult process to really get your head around at times. And
that's the problem I've had with what's happened in Illinois, because we've undergone a very similar type of experience here in Washington, and yet it's very different, because in Washington, our assault weapon ban hit the legislature seven years in a row before they finally got it passed, and we were allowed public comment, and there was a very vociferous debate both in the House and the Senate that lasted almost the entire legislative session, and then it was passed at the very end of the legislative session. Now, I believe it's unconstitutional legislation, but I do believe that representative government, at least to some degree, was, implemented there. What I saw in Illinois, though, was absolutely the most sinister thing I'd ever seen. I didn't even think it was unimaginable in the United States of America. You take an innocuous piece of insurance legislation, you strike everything, you turn it into an all-out assault weapon ban, you put an emergency enactment clause on there, you have no debate in the House, you have no debate in the Senate, you have no public hearings, and in 72 hours later, your governor's signing it. It's effective that very moment. Oh, and then you require everyone who wants to keep their scary assault weapon, you have to register it. It's absolutely the most sinister piece of legislation I've ever seen in the United States.
Well, and stack on top of that also the venue limiting law that they passed,
which just got struck down. And then add on top of that, you got two judges there who I believe took twice the amount of campaign contributions that was legally permissible, but of course, your courts let that slide. And then neither of them recused on a case in which one of their largest campaign donors was the named defendant of the case. It's only in the state of Illinois could you see something like that.
And we've been tracking, I know you did the Countdown to Confiscation series, but we haven't had numbers updated of the gun registration since January 31st. What do you take away from that? They have not updated those numbers in a month and a half.
Well, I one of two things. Either A, everyone in Illinois finally started listening to me, which I told you do not register these things after the deadline, or candidly, I think this was a real embarrassment to your governor and attorney general. I think that no matter how they tried to spin the numbers, and I was, even on my videos, I was trying to say, okay, let's give him a positive spin here. Maybe it's way more than 1% compliance. Maybe it's as high as 5%. But you're in single-digit compliance, and I think this is just a lot of egg on your governor's face, and I think that's one of the reasons they just don't want to publish the numbers anymore, is this is going to reaffirm that this has been an abject failure for the state of Illinois.
Where do we go from here? We talked a bit earlier about kind of the landscape of, a quest for knowledge of those who are just now getting into the Second Amendment and understanding why it's important and part of our constitutional civil liberties. But where do we go from here? Especially when you see places like Chicago. We talk about this a lot as well, and covering Illinois and the impacts on, how the state house can possibly bring about public safety solutions. But when they're ending cash bail statewide, the first state to do so, when their business policies aren't friendly enough to attract more opportunity, as we hear from the minority Republicans at the state house, and you've got the Democrat supermajority moving forward with, social equity provisions. Yep. What's the trajectory with the right to keep and bear arms, and the other side with the constant headlines of violent crime in urban cities?
Well, first of all, there is no doubt, and there's no debating, that there is a significant gun violence problem in most major cities. Seattle is included in that. We have set homicide records for the last 3 years in a row. So it's not unique to Chicago. I think Chicago just gets most of the headlines because, well, the acuteness of the problem there is really, really great. I want all your listeners to understand, and you can look up the data for yourself, so you don't have to take my word on it, but the Department of Justice own statistics say that 88.8% of all gun crimes that are committed in the United States are committed by an individual who's unlawfully possessing the firearm at the time the crime is committed. I'm sure if you pick up the Chicago Tribune on Monday and you take a look at all the shootings that have happened over the weekend, I'm willing to bet 95 to 100% of them were committed by someone who was unlawfully possessing the firearm at the time that shooting occurred. So we have an identifiable demographic group. We have the identifiable problem. One would think that state legislatures would write laws to address the identifiable problem, but they don't. Illinois, Washington, Oregon, California, all these states, they write laws to disarm the lawful and responsible citizen. And the truth of the matter is I think in the last few years, those on the political left that are clearly showing a strong desire to keep power at whatever cost it takes, kind of use the pandemic to figure out who are the lions and who are the lambs. And at this point, I think they're trying to slaughter all the lions. And you got to understand that a person who's willing to live the right of self-preservation is truly living a life of liberty. And to some on our political spectrum, that life of liberty, it's offensive to them. And so they are hell-bent on changing or ruining that way of life. What do I ultimately think this is going to happen? This is, if anyone ever read Stephen King's The Stand, we're in the final couple chapters here. We're going to have to go out into the desert and just duke it out. So I do believe we're going to see an assault weapon ban case before the United States Supreme Court next session. I do believe that we're going to see a magazine ban case before the United States Court next session. And I think we're just going to have to resolve these issues once and for all. And I do think that one of those many cases out of Illinois could easily be the tip of the spear as it relates to assault weapon bans.
William Kirk, host of Washington Gun Law, with us here with Bishop on Air. Greatly appreciate his time. Before we rolled the recorder, you were talking about a video you're getting ready to produce here about Illinois law enforcement filing briefs. Touch on that if you can.
Yeah, so listen, this was a fun video to do because every time I do a video about Illinois, I always have to tell everyone how rotten I think your state is. Now, I want to put a caveat on that. I have met, because I have so many followers in Illinois, and I really, really appreciate it. And I was down at SHOT Show, and I ran into more people from Illinois than any other state when I was down there. And all of them were just absolutely terrific. So,
well, believe it or not, William, Illinois has time and again been shown to truly embody the diversity of the entire United States. If you were to take the entire United States and boil it down, you would get the population roughly of what Illinois looks like.
Yeah, and so the people I've met have been awesome. Your local and state government absolutely is horrific. However, I want everyone in Illinois to know that the Illinois Sheriff's Association has submitted an amicus brief in the case of Barnett v. Raoul on the petition for review by the United States Supreme Court. I have a video coming out this afternoon. I break down the brief. I think the Illinois Sheriff's Department have done themselves incredibly well here. I think the citizens of Illinois should be very appreciative and proud of their Sheriff's Association because they are clearly arguing against the Illinois Attorney General. They have filed a supporting memorandum in support of Mr. Barnett. It's a well-drafted memorandum. It's begging the court to accept review, and they're coming from the position of, hey, we got two jobs. Our job is to keep our community safe, but our secondary role, and sheriffs take this role equally as important, is we need to preserve the constitutional rights of our citizens. And this law right now is requiring us to enforce an unconstitutional law, and that's not what we signed up for. And I think the Illinois Sheriff's Association should all get a big old attaboy for what they did there.
William Kirk, Washington Gun Law, greatly appreciate you taking the time with us, and let's connect again soon in the near future, all right?
Thank you very much for your time, and everyone out in Illinois, keep fighting and stay safe.
Tons of headlines out of Chicago that we got to delve into, and to do that, each and every Monday we check in with William Kelly, the reporter out of Chicago, giving us a breakdown of the situation when it comes to crime, the situation when it comes to the migrants, and even his challenges against the Chicago mayor, looking at campaign finances. So talked with William earlier this morning, and here's William Kelly describing a headline that's on the Chicago Tribune right now, talking about a growing number of unlicensed migrant drivers, and how could that possibly be impacting public safety. Here's William Kelly giving some of his thoughts on that particular situation.
Well, we have 100 hit and run accidents, if you want to call it that, a day. And, I was the victim of a hit and run myself. I was, a out of control driver, blew through a red light, speeding, totaled my car, and got out of his car and ran away. When I called the police to follow up, the officer indignantly reminded me that it was an accident. Okay. But what does that mean? There was a horrific story of a woman who was riding her bicycle over the weekend, hit from behind, and dragged. Okay. So this person who hit her knew that he hit her. He was probably indignant because she didn't have the decency to stop being dragged by his car, right? So anyway, apparently this individual also ran from the scene of the crime, allegedly, as they say, right? And now she's fighting for her life with a broken neck and burns over half of her body. So these are the consequences. These are the consequences, Greg. And as a reporter, it obviously pains me to hear these stories. As a citizen, it pains me to also be on the receiving end of these drivers that don't have licenses, don't have license plates. It's pretty easy. You should be able to. I see them, I can spot them. I'm not a police officer, but yet when I'm driving, if somebody blows by me at 90 miles an hour, practically, throwing, knocking the steering wheel out of my own steering wheel out of my hands, and I notice that they don't have a license plate, it's pretty obvious that we're dealing with someone who isn't living by the same rules that we are, Greg.
So again, William Kelly talking about the headlines out of Chicago of more unlicensed migrant drivers on the roads and the public safety concerns there. But public safety obviously top of mind for voters, as they either have already voted in early elections or are heading to the polls tomorrow in Cook County. They've got a contested Democrat primary for Cook County State's Attorney after Kim Foxx says she's not going to run again. So that leaves for an open seat, and there's two candidates vying for that. One seems to be more of a moderate. The other one seems to have the Democrat Party backing. But how important is that election? Here's William Kelly from Chicago.
Well, as it stands right now, crime is just simply not being punished, and apparently we're getting more of it. Let's put it that way. You hear about the 18 shot, the 4 killed over the weekend, but what that doesn't include is the fact that just this morning there were 13 armed robberies around Chicago. Police say 4 or 5 men jump out of a vehicle. Sounds familiar, right? Well, it apparently happens on every morning, and nothing is being done about it. They point guns at the victim, saying, this is a robbery. Give us everything you've got. And they're armed with handguns, rifles, knives. You also have, obviously, during the week you have shootings, you have murders. I believe it was on Wednesday, March 13th. 10 people were shot, 9 dead in a 24-hour period on a Wednesday. So these are the kinds of statistics that you expect from a war zone, not a major American city, Greg.
But when you've got this contested primary, of course, the outcome could mean one way of prosecuting versus another. You got Eileen O'Neill Burke. She is a former justice and former prosecutor. And you've also got Clayton Harris, who used to work with the state's attorney prosecutor's office. So again, I asked William Kelly just how important this particular election outcome is tomorrow in Cook County.
Oof. Well, as a reporter, I'm not, I don't tell people, who to vote for, but clearly we have, clearly what we're doing is not working. That much, I think, is safe to say, Greg.
You've also got the healthcare concerns. Last week, the number of individuals in migrant shelters with measles increased, and you had Governor J.B. Pritzker highlight how people aren't getting vaccinated for measles when they arrive, and they're not being turned around, but now we have a measles outbreak and other health concerns and the humanitarian crisis there with the continued influx of non-citizen migrants from the southern U.S. border. Here's William Kelly.
Absolutely, Greg. It is a worry that I don't think people, I think that sadly it's being downplayed. Measles are very dangerous. They're highly contagious. More contagious than COVID, that's a scientific fact, and yet, we have we have measles in the city of Chicago, a problem that really we haven't had for decades, and I don't think the Chicago population realizes how big of a danger this is, because a lot of children in CPS have not been vaccinated. Okay, so we're not just talking about migrants who have come to this country with measles and not vaccinated, but now they are in the Chicago public schools with students who also have not been vaccinated. So this is one of many migrant-related issues that is just not being taken as seriously by our public officials as you would think, Greg.
William Kelly, reporter out of Chicago. We've talked to him in the past about his attempts to get answers from former Mayor Lori Lightfoot, and she ultimately had his media credentials revoked, which he sued. That, I believe, is still pending, but now William Kelly has another lawsuit in front of the circuit court up there in Cook County, and it deals with campaign finance questions against the current Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, and William broke it down as to what this is about and what's going to happen this week, he expects.
Oh, absolutely, Greg, and thank you. Like with everything else that's taking place in the city, we're not getting the answers that we deserve from our elected officials. Brandon Johnson, there was a full-page ad that was taken out by a political action committee, a self-proclaimed political action committee that was not registered with the State Board of Elections, a full-page ad in the Chicago Sun-Times. I, as a reporter, reached out to the mayor asking, why he did not report this in-kind contribution, reached out to the Sun-Times to ask who is this committee, who's behind this committee, how much was the ad, tried to reach out to the committee, and no answers. Just like with the migrant, unlicensed migrant drivers, if you and I drove around with a license plate or a vehicle sticker or there would be consequences for us, Greg. I happen to know that when it comes to candidates, if you receive an in-kind contribution from a committee, including a full-page color ad in the Chicago Sun-Times, without somehow acknowledging that, there are consequences. Well, there were no consequences until I filed this complaint with the State Board of Elections, and now Mayor Johnson has received a subpoena to appear at a preliminary hearing with me this Thursday, the 21st, and I promise to report back to you what is discovered.
So we'll definitely be anticipating that report from William Kelly. Again, greatly appreciate him taking time with us today here with Bishop on Air. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join me each and every weekday morning here with Bishop on Air, breaking down things that you need to know to get your morning started here. It is Bishop on Air. All right, guys, that's all I got for you today. Appreciate you being here. Tomorrow, we'll talk about the primary election in the state of Illinois. While it seems that the Democrat and Republican presidential candidates have already secured their nomination with enough, delegates and whatnot from across the country, we'll be looking at some other things across the state of Illinois, from the Bring Chicago Home ordinance that they're looking to do, increasing the transfer tax on properties in Chicago, down to some local state house districts with some interesting funding that's been going on, especially with the teachers unions supporting downstate Republicans in Republican primaries. So all of that and in between, we'll talk about that and the lack of competition and more. So have yourself a wonderful rest of the day. Get out there and make it happen, all right? Bishop on Air. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.